Hello and welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie, and tonight we are discussing our purpose. We're reminding ourselves of what is more true than this present moment. Yesterday, we had a pretty important conversation surrounding the difference between the factual reality versus the subjective reality, which is our experience. And to that point, as we examine our purpose today and really go into what even is it and what does it look like when we live according to it and actually allow for ourselves to elevate outside of and beyond that which we're feeling in our experience in this present moment. I honestly, this is really hitting home for me right now personally. I arrived, I was flying this morning, hence why we're doing an evening show. And this evening it was funny. I had a hard about an hour. I had about a hard hour. And as I saw the title for tonight's show, I was just kind of reminding myself of what are we talking about tonight and why do we even get on the show every single day? It was such a poignant reminder for me about the intentionality to pull ourselves sometimes out of our experience that we're feeling in that moment and remind ourselves of what is more true than what we are feeling and experiencing right here, right now. I went through kind of the process of feeling what I needed to feel on an emotional level in order to then move through the emotion to get to the other side. So emotions, and this is really, really important, y'all. This actually has brought so much freedom to me over the last 4 to 5 years as I've been kind of going through this journey of knowing myself. The understanding and awareness of what even is emotion has been so catalytic for me to be able to heal from the past, for me to be able to process what's going on right here, right now in the present moment in order to then live in freedom, to be able to create, to be able to walk in accordance with who I was created to be in the first place. But if we don't understand what's going on inside of us, it holds power over us. Effectively, if we don't understand what is, whether it's the factual, objective, external reality, or it's the internal, subjective, experiential reality, both are real. Both hold power over us. And until we understand it, it will effectively be something that we subjugate ourselves to without even our own intention, our own desire. So, for us to yield power and kind of step into the driver's seat of our lives, we need to understand what is even going on in the first place. So, part of this whole process of me coming to understand emotions, it was through a number of different sources, but having a fundamental realization around the fact that emotion is something that I have to move through, or else I will be stuck in it for so long as I do not get to the other side of it. So, whether I was 13 years old, or 8 years old, or 22 years old, for so many experiences and emotions as I have not processed and moved through, I am fundamentally stuck at those ages and those narratives and the mindsets that I developed about the world, about myself, about God, about partners, about kids, about my parents, about every person. Anything that happened in the past that I have not had the chance or even the desire to move through and heal from, I'm stuck in that moment and I'm stuck in that mindset in kind of like that eternal narrative and eternal framework until I do the work to go back, consider what happened, what was my experience, and then move through the emotions. I heard this podcast probably 4 years ago, and it was so helpful because it gave me a visual of what emotions are. Emotions are a tunnel. And if we stop midway through the tunnel, of course we get stuck in the emotion. So we actually need to move all the way through that. And what that looked like for me tonight, and I'm just being honest as I'm learning and growing in real time with you guys, what that looked like was I got in the shower and I just took a hot shower and cried. And it was pretty sad. There were some things, and I knew I was sitting in my experience. And I knew also that the objective reality was this isn't actually the end of the story. Yesterday, I gave kind of an example of how in my adult life, this was a couple years ago, I was talking to one of my parents and they looked at me a certain way. And that look really triggered me to kind of have my 8-year-old self activate. And I started feeling the way that my 8-year-old self did just by a look. And y'all, I will say, if any of you are high empaths, you really care about how people are doing, you care about how people are feeling, then you'll probably resonate with this. People who aren't high empaths, they struggle in different ways. But those of us who really care about people and really tend to feel what they feel, then what ends up happening is that when somebody looks at us a certain way, we hear a tone in their voice, we perk up and we put ourselves in their shoes. And then we end up ignoring our own experience by way of actually abandoning ourselves to go and sit with them. But what ends up, as a result of that, what ends up happening is that we're actually in the abandonment of ourselves and our own experience. We don't ever move through the emotion associated with the pain that they caused. So if somebody looks at you a certain way as a kid, and we all know what that's like, whether the parent yelled or screamed or just simply looked, we know that the sickness in our stomach that we felt as kids when we had a caretaker look at us a certain way or speak a certain way or touch us a certain way. We know that emotion. So to then have that experience in adulthood, regardless of how the relationship is today, our unprocessed trauma or unprocessed experience from the past shows up in the present. And so we are thus unable to see clearly the truth of what is actually going on right here in this present moment. So when people come to you, or we even can come to ourselves and say you're overreacting, there's two layers of reality that we need to be looking at. One layer is the experience right here in the present moment and the facts of this present moment. But then there's a layer deeper, the experience of the past and the facts of the past. The reality is that I actually lived in a household for only probably 3 years, but I lived in a household where there was a lot of volatility emotionally from one of my caretakers. And it was scary. It wasn't ever violent, but emotionally it was violent, but it wasn't physically violent. And so because of that, y'all, this is the thing. We need to address those subdermal layers. It's like when you're looking at an iceberg and you see all of a sudden you kind of poke your head under the water and you're like, oh my gosh, look at all of that was going on underneath. So the reason why this is important is because the present reality with someone is beautiful, wonderful, like how it is for me right now with my parents. But I hadn't yet processed that 8-year-old for those 2 or 3 couple of years where one of my caretakers was angry. They would get angry sometimes. And I had never addressed that and processed that emotion. So a couple of years ago, when I experienced that look, that was the time that was effectively that younger kid in me raising its hand and saying, is now the time that we're going to heal from this? And y'all, I got to tell you, ever since I moved through the emotion in that moment at probably 29 years old, 28 years old, when I moved through that emotion that I had not done when I was 8 years old, I have been completely free from it. I haven't once experienced it. And maybe they've never looked at me that way. To be honest, I don't even know. But the reality is that we become free from the pain of the past that has felt like, have you guys ever seen The Christmas Carol, where Jacob Marley has all these chains holding him back after 7 years of being dead? He effectively is still going through the process of paying penance in his afterlife. And this is the story by Charles Dickens. It's like bricks that he is carrying, chains of the past, link by link and yard by yard, all which is unforgiven, all that is unprocessed. We're taking with us from the past into the present. But once we actually break ourselves free from that one block or that one chain, by way of moving through the tunnel that is the emotion associated with it, we're forever untethered. And now we can have that experience where maybe we get that look or we get that harsh word, or maybe we even get that physical grip or something negative in that way. And it doesn't hold the same power over us as it once did. So in that process of forgiveness, in that process of going back and healing from the past, we actually are reclaiming the power that we gave away in that moment. So with every bout of forgiveness, every bout of leaning in, looking in the mirror, saying, why am I feeling this way? What is the origin story associated with this present day emotion? What does the past have to say about it? Now I actually am going to be able to be free and fully alive and present here in this moment to thus be able to walk in accordance with my purpose. So this whole question that we're looking at tonight, what if your purpose is bigger than you think? Y'all, are we actually able to be healed enough to walk in it? And no one else can answer that but you. And so for us to be able to actually sit with this question and sit with the reality of this conversation, it really warrants us to be able to examine, well, how much work have I done to get me to this point? And so today, as I was just going through this moment, I knew that, okay, I'm processing my present day experience. I know that there's subdermal layers linking to the past. And frankly, I know the truth, the reality, the factual reality. I know that we're going to get past this. And I know that it is actually not the end of the story. I was writing about this before this experience even started. So I want to touch on it here tonight on the show. In us acknowledging the past and its power over us until we move through it and thus break free from it, every single one of us, and this speaks a lot to our purpose. So this is really, really important. Every single one of us has a light. There's this biblical concept of being a city on a hill and being a lamp that shines brightly. And we don't put a lamp under a basket, but instead we shine and allow for our light to exude into every corner of the room, every corner of the world. And so in order for us to do that, we need to recognize a couple of things. One, we need to recognize that for every great light, there is an equally great shadow. And in that process, we recognize, okay, if I'm actually really, really strong in this area, there's probably an equally counter weakness according to it. So if you're really, really good at serving people, or you're really, really good at providing for people, could we ever get to the point where the shadow could actually be that your worth and your identity is tied up in X? So it's all tied up in the external way you show up and not actually tied to who you are intrinsically. Do you actually value who you are apart from your doing? Is your being something worthy of honor and love? Another way that this has manifested for me specifically is I've really kind of tied my light to, or I guess it's not even tying a light. I think that we're all given a God-given natural and innate light. So a light that I have is to shine it on other people. Like I actually am very effervescent, and then I'll take that effervescence, that joy, that energy, and then I can shine it on somebody else and make them light up. So now, by way of kind of almost like being a lighthouse, like shining your light on multiple other people. And frankly, I think we all have that ability in whatever regard the way in which we shine is. That's kind of the goal, right? Is that we all kind of function as that lighthouse. And however you shine up, whether it's through your brilliance, maybe it's through mathematics, maybe it's through linguistics, maybe it's through, like me, an effervescence and an energy and a zest for life. Maybe it's through the way that you actually lead your team in kind of the quietness, but you actually elevate them so that they feel seen and they feel known. Maybe it's completely different than everything we just shared, yet you know that that is your unique gift. So then the question is, okay, well, what is the kind of the antithesis of that? What's the opposite of that? And then where do I actually need to watch out for the greatness of the shadow? Because with every great light, there is a great shadow. And so as we start actually realizing this, now we can put in safeguards. Now we can put in boundary lines. So I like to think of the concept of an alleyway. If we're bowling and we know our bowling pins, we know that, okay, that's where I'm aiming. Those are my targets. That's what I'm called to do. That's my mission. So our bowling pins are our mission. And our light, frankly, it's the thing that kind of beams forth to help us to get towards our mission. But the shadow is effectively the gutter. It's like we are going full blast. We're going full force. We're energetic. We're in our pursuit, regardless of what that looks like in terms of external manifestation. But then if we're not careful, we can go just a little bit deviating off course. We've all done this. We used to play Wii bowling as kids with my dad. And it was like, it would start going straight and then it would just slowly go off into the gutter, like right before you get to all of the pins. It was so frustrating. But honestly, the same is true. When you see it with rockets, when we were first trying to launch off rockets and figure out how that is, there's all these old time clips from 50 years ago, 60, 70, 80 years ago. And it's like they just keep bombing over. And they start off going straight and then they just get slightly off course and then they explode. And so our goal is that we actually implement bumpers. And the bumpers serve as guardrails so that we know our light, we know the power of it and the prowess of it, but we also know what the gutters look like, what the gutters sound like, what it feels like, so that we know, okay, I'm teetering on the edge. And frankly, today it felt kind of like, okay, I'm teetering on the edge. I know that it's important to feel the emotion, to move through it. But man, y'all, when we've got a strong emotion that is in opposition towards those targets, that's like that very fine teetering line, because we've also seen the bowling pins and the game of bowling where the ball looks like it's going in the gutter and all of a sudden it hits a hard curve and man, it knocks it straight and you get a strike. That's effectively what it is to process our inner world. It can look like you're going off course, but man, if we cultivate the tools and we cultivate the skill set, we can do both. We can achieve our purpose while also being integrous to the reality of what is going on inside of us. I haven't seen this done well by many, many people. Like, I feel like this is an art form that we're all kind of slowly starting to master. And there's some who have done incredible and made incredible impact, done incredible things, and also known who they are. But a lot of times when you see people who have done incredible things, they might have a lack of sense of self, or maybe they're very full of self and they're not thinking about the world around them. So there's this very fine line of having a big purpose with and a keen awareness of the reality of both the inner and external world. We're never sacrificing one for the other, but it's this duality. It's this play between logic and emotion, between purpose and allowing for the reality of what's going on inside of us to coexist together. I've seen it so much where people fall on their sword for the sake of, it's almost like a martyr mindset in order to make an impact. But man, I really believe, gosh, I really believe this. I really believe that we're actually called to know fully who we are, to enjoy life, like the fruit of the spirit, that you shall know a tree by its fruit. The 9 fruits of what it is to have the spirit of Christ living in us is love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Every single one of those is effectively coming from this really bright place. It's not this woe is me or being down in the dumps or I'm on my mission. I'm a martyr. I'm sacrificing. It's actually coming from this really joyous place. And perhaps even as I'm saying that, I'm like, maybe our definition of joy might need to shift, where it's not necessarily that we feel it all the time, but we're choosing it. So I think I just opened a whole can of worms that I need to go sit with and think through. But y'all, it's really true. When we think about, have we seen good examples of people who walk in the fullness of their purpose, yet also walk in a strong sense of self where they are acting in accordance with who they were created to be, and they don't have to die and kill their personality and kill what they love and kill themselves along the way? Is there a way to do both? And I think, I'm thinking about people who have physically given their life. We're talking about 4th of July weekend. Yesterday was 4th of July here in the States. So many people have literally given their life. And so what does that look like to be willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of a mission? And also, I don't know, I feel like I need to sit with this one. I think it really comes down to the individual's call. What is your purpose? And I would argue, I would hope that these people who have given their lives, these men and these women who are so brave and so courageous, that was their intentional, like they chose that, I'm thinking about Viktor Frankl in the book Man's Search for Meaning, where he was in the German concentration camp and he was sitting in between this stage of between stimulus and responses choice. There have been so many who have been sent to war against their own decision, but there's a lot who choose it. And so, for the purpose of, I guess this is so interesting, and I'm kind of brainstorming with you all in real time. If you are intentionally choosing your own destiny, then I would hope you're doing so with intelligent design. So much of the Knowing Show, we talk about the cultivation of our intelligences: spiritual intelligence, physical intelligence, emotional intelligence, and intellectual intelligence. And so, for so much as we have the freedom to choose physically in terms of our activities and the way that we live our lives, our profession, I would hope that we're making a holistic, intelligent choice. But then, Brian, to your point about the draft, is a real thing. What do we do when we are in these situations where we cannot choose the external environments? Well, we can choose our internal state. And that's what Viktor Frankl was even writing about in the first place, between stimulus and responses choice. He said, you can strip away all human freedom from me, but you cannot take away the greatest of all human freedoms, which is the internal choice of how I will emotionally, cognitively, spiritually respond to my physical environment. So for so long, I've never drawn this correlation before. For so long as we are putting stock in the physical, that which ultimately at the end of the day, we cannot control, I think we're always going to be missing something really, really at a core internal level until we take the time to cultivate our spirit, our soul. We've been cultivating our mind for a long time. So it is the internal choice that we must take into consideration. Maybe the external purpose, and y'all, I've actually had to ask myself this question many times. I do feel called to something physically, externally, like something to do. But if I never see that actualize in my lifetime, will it still be a life worth living? Will I still find it a worthy endeavor to do the work to cultivate myself, even if I never see the fruit of my labor? That's the ideal, that we see the transformation in front of us, that we see the change and the impact in our lives. But maybe we don't. And is it still worth it? Are you worth it? Are you alone, the work that you're doing and that I'm doing internally to change, to grow, to become, is that enough? Or do we need the accolades, the external key performance indicators to measure our worth and thus define our worth moving forward? So, to that point, I want to talk through today's lesson and then we'll come back and kind of chat about it a little bit. But we're reading lesson 186 from A Course in Miracles. Salvation of the world depends on me. Here is the statement that will one day take all arrogance away from every mind. Here is the thought of true humility, which holds no function as your own, but that which has been given you. It offers your acceptance of a part assigned to you without insisting on another role. It does not judge your proper role. It but acknowledges the will of God is done on earth as well as heaven. It unites all wills on earth in heaven's place to save the world, restoring it to heaven's peace. Let us not fight our function. We did not establish it. It is not our idea. The means are given us by which it will be perfectly accomplished. All that we are asked to do is accept our part in genuine humility and not deny with self-deceiving arrogance that we are worthy. What is given us to do, we have the strength to do. Our minds are perfectly suited to take the assignment, our minds are suited perfectly to take the part assigned to us by one who knows us well. Today's idea may seem quite sobering until you see its meaning. All it says is that your Father still remembers you and offers you the perfect trust he holds in you who are his son. It does not ask that you be different in any way from what you are. What could humility request but this? And what could arrogance deny but this? Today we will not shrink from our assignment on the spacious grounds that modesty is outraged. It is pride that would deny the call for God himself. All false humility we lay aside today, that we may listen to God's voice reveal to us what he would have us do. We do not doubt our adequacy for the function he would offer us. We will be certain only that he knows our strength, our wisdom, and our holiness. And if he deems us worthy, so we are. It is but arrogance that judges otherwise. There is one way, and only one, to be released from the imprisonment your plan to prove the false is true has brought to you. Accept the plan you did not make instead. Judge not your value to it. If God's voice assures you that salvation needs your part and that the whole depends on you, be sure that it is so. The arrogant must cling to words, afraid to go beyond them to experience which might affront their stance. Yet are the humble free to hear the voice which tells them that they are what they are and what to do. Arrogance makes an image of yourself that is not real. It is this image which quails and retreats in terror as the voice of God assures you that you have the strength, the wisdom, the holiness to go beyond all images. You are not weak, as is the image of yourself. You are not ignorant and helpless. Sin cannot tarnish the truth in you, and misery can come not near the holy home of God. All this the voice of God relates to you. And as he speaks, the image trembles and seeks to attack the threat it does not know, sensing its bases crumble. Let it go. Salvation of the world depends on you and not upon this little pile of dust. What can it tell the Holy Son of God? Why need he be concerned with it at all? And so we find our peace. We will accept the function God has given us, for all illusions rest upon the weird belief that we can make another for ourselves. Our self-made roles are shifting, and they seem to change from mourners to ecstatic bliss of love and loving. We can weep or laugh and greet the day with welcome or with tears. Our very being seems to change as we experience 1,000 shifts in mood, and our emotions rise as high indeed, or dash us to the ground in hopelessness. Is this the Son of God? Could he create such instability and call it Son? He who is changeless shares his attributes with his creation. All the images his Son appears to make have no effect on what he is. They blow across his mind like wind-swept leaves that form a patterning an instant, break apart to group again and scamper off, or like miracles seen above a desert rising from the dust. These unsubstantial images will go and leave your mind unclouded and serene when you accept the function given you. The images you make give rise to but conflicting goals, impermanent and vague, uncertain and ambiguous. Who could be constant in his efforts or direct his energies and concentrated drive towards goals like these? The functions which the world esteems are so uncertain that they change 10 times an hour at their most secure. What hope of gain can rest on goals like this? In lovely contrast, certain as the sun's return each morning to dispel the night, your truly given function stands out clear and holy and unambiguous. There is no doubt of its validity. It comes from one who knows no error, and his voice is certain of its messages. They will not change, nor be in conflict. All of them point to one goal, and one you can attain. Your plan may be impossible, but God's can never fail because he is its source. Do as God's voice directs, and if it asks a thing of you which seems impossible, remember who it is that asks, and who would make denial. Then consider this, which is more likely to be right, the voice that speaks for the creator of all things, who knows all things exactly as they are, or a distorted image of yourself, confused, bewildered, inconsistent, and unsure of everything. Let not its voice direct you. Hear instead a certain voice, which tells you of a function given you by your Creator who remembers you and urges you now remember him. His gentle voice is calling from the known to the unknowing. He would comfort you, although he knows no sorrow. He would make a restitution, though he is complete, a gift to you, although he knows that you have everything already. He has thoughts which answer every need his son perceives, although he sees them not. For love must give, and what is given in his name takes on the form most useful in a world of form. These are the forms which can never deceive because they come from formlessness itself. Forgiveness is an earthly form of love, which, as it is in heaven, has no form. Yet what is needed here is given here as it is needed. In this form, you can fulfill your function even here. Although what love will mean to you when formlessness has been restored to you is greater still. Salvation of the world depends on you who can forgive. Such is your function here. I'm reminded of a couple of things reading this. I'm reminded that ego and arrogance are actually the voices that come in and say, we are not who we truly are. The lack of identity, the insecurity is actually coming from not this place of humility. It's actually coming from this place of ego, and not always ego. I think fear. Someone actually challenged me on this a couple years, or I guess a couple months ago, which I so appreciated. I was talking about how it's either kind of fear or love. Like those are the two main things. It's love or fear. And they're like, yeah, but ego is perhaps different than fear. And I like that concept. At the root of ego, I think that there is fear, but at the same time, they operate in very different ways sometimes. And so, to that concept of our identity and remembering who we are and remembering what our purpose is, sometimes the greatest adversary in our pursuit of remembering our identity and then walking in it and ultimately our purpose is our own selves, is our own ego. It's fear or ego, let's just say one or the other, that renounces the prowess that you and I carry. And y'all, I actually have a question. I'm just going to come back over here and jump into the chat. How many of you were kind of born and raised in a Christian conservative environment? Because I was, and there was kind of certain struggles that I encountered as a result of that. And as a result of the upbringing that I had as it pertains to the narrative, kind of resoundingly from my upbringing was, you're a worm, you deserve nothing. It is only by the grace of God that you're not burning in hell. That was the overarching narrative. And so because of that, there was a lot of weight put on the fact that I should never think anything of myself. I shouldn't trust myself. I'm effectively fundamentally evil. That was my understanding. And so to then flip the narrative almost entirely and think, okay, if I was created for a purpose, if I was fearfully and wonderfully made, if I am loved and cherished, then I actually, at my core, don't know who I am. And so then I'm dealing with a core foundational identity crisis that in order for me to even understand my purpose, I need to understand who even am I. So this whole point of knowing, the knowing show, was all resting on this question of, well, who are you? And asking that question of anybody, much less of ourselves, I've found I still kind of feel flabbergasted sometimes having to answer that, because how do we summarize ourselves to a perfect stranger? How do we summarize ourselves to someone who does know us? Who are you? And who were you created to be? Because that's perhaps even the bigger question. Recognizing I created this knowing framework over the years of identifying, well, who was I in the past? How was I kind of fashioned to think about the world based on my experiences, based on what was told to me? Who was I based on those core moments in my childhood? And then who am I today? How does the past show up in this present moment? How did those narratives and the way that I viewed the world back then show up in my life, in what I do and the decisions I make? How does that inform my response? Because going back to that quote by Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response is choice. Well, choice is predicated in a belief system. And so often, our beliefs in adulthood were actually formed in childhood. So, to this whole question of knowing who we are, it's actually an ongoing need to update these operating systems in our minds, examining the beliefs, examining, is that really true? Is that what I've experienced to be true? Or is that what was told to me? The Latin root of intuition is intuere, which means to be taught from within. How much are we actually being taught? How much of what we believe was revealed to us was experienced by us versus sitting and listening to somebody else recounting their experience in life, whether it was a kind of a moral lesson or a spiritual practice because of their experience, but we have yet to experience for ourselves. It doesn't mean we throw everything away, but it does mean that we actually pursue knowing innately for our own selves versus taking everyone else's word for it. Because here's the thing, once we actually start doing that, we're incrementally scooching over into the driver's seat, and thus more responsibility falls on our shoulders. We now have nobody to point the finger to and blame. So it's actually kind of a scary thing to start asking questions and start pursuing true knowledge spiritually, emotionally, cognitively, physically for ourselves. Do I actually believe that? Well, because if I choose to believe that of my own free will versus, well, that was what was told to me, that's what it's the way it's always been done. Now I actually have to assume autonomy and authority for my own life. And I have to choose responsibility for my actions, for my decisions. Whereas before I could just point the finger and say, well, they told me so. And of course, is that ever really a good answer? But so many of us, I mean, at least I did for 28 years of my life, I was functioning under the concept of assigning my belief systems and my experiences by way of the filter of everyone else. I would go into a moment and experience it through the eyes of anybody around me, whether it was through the eyes of my former husband, whether it was through the eyes of my friend or my sister or my mother or my dad or my brother or anybody else. It was, how is everyone else doing versus actually sitting in my own experience. And it's a scary thing for many, many reasons. But it's so important that we ask this question, am I willing, am I brave enough to actually sit in my own experience and know what is going on inside of me, know the truth? Because for so far, this is really, really, really important. Here's the objective reality. Here's factual reality that's objective, not subjective by any intents and purposes. But how far off is that from my experience if I was to go and sit in it? So often it's just so much easier to not even just sit with the objective facts, but sometimes to even go sit in someone else's shoes. So those of us who are perhaps more so the logical type, they'll sit and just, okay, well, objectively this happened without any incorporation of the emotional side. Or for me, who is a former recovering codependent, I would actually go sit in the other person's experience. So the way that I think of it kind of like a bridge. The middle, the objective reality, that's the middle of the bridge. On one side is my experience, on the other side is that person's experience. And then of course somewhere in the middle is the objective truth. But here's the thing. Their experience is very real because it's predicated in years upon years upon years of data, years upon years of experiential data that has backed everything coming up to this present moment. Same goes for me. So if I don't honor my own experience, I am missing 30% or more, 33% or more of the full picture of what is. Reality constitutes the objective reality factually and both parties' experiential reality. So we need to take the full picture of experience and facts into the equation, because the reality is you and I are not isolated in just the left hemisphere of the brain. We have the right. And if we're suppressing it, if we're not honoring it or giving voice to it, or even just letting it show up and say, hey, what did you experience there? We're really missing out on a lot of data. And y'all, the consequences of not allowing ourselves to move through that and understand what is going on inside of us is colossal. And we see this with people who, we see kind of the backlash, or like the big moment where somebody freaks out and goes off the deep end. But it was years of making the process. And for so many of us who are unwilling to sit in our experience, whether it's because we're sitting in someone else's and maybe that's a sign of codependence, or we're sitting just in the facts and we're not willing to engage our hearts, just our minds, every single one of us is at risk of not just this whole concept of going off the rails and going off the deep end, but we're all at risk of not walking fully in our purpose and in our calling, because the ability to be full bodied and to leverage every part of our internal faculties, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, physically, we're not going to be able to thus walk in the fullness of our purpose. So for us to be able to even answer this question, what if your purpose is far bigger and greater than you ever dreamed? Perhaps the question is, are we even able to acknowledge everything that has led up to this point to then be free to move into the future, which is our purpose? So if we haven't dealt with the past, if we're not free from the past, if the past is holding us down and coloring our view of the future, then we're definitely not going to be able to walk in the fullness of all that's to come, all that's waiting, and all that could be. I just am going to take a moment to jump here in the chat. Comic Flick Fusion, I'm so happy to see you. You said, I'm battling right now what I'm supposed to be working. I am job to job for a very long time. Comic Flick Fusion, what is your career right now? What's your job? Like, where are you working right now? I would love to know that, because I think, to be honest, I think a lot of people can resonate with what you're saying, with the whole concept of not knowing kind of what that one thing is. Josh, I'm glad to see you. Brian, I love you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so grateful for you. Underboss, hello. Good to see you. I'm going to jump over here to YouTube. All right. Dylan, I'm glad you're here. Charles, Sam the man. Fabian, I'm glad to see you, my friend. Hello. A warehouse job. Comic Flick Fusion, I'm curious. Oh, Leading Healing says, make comedy flicks sounds great, but what's the fusion about for your projects? I want to know. I love that. Comic Book Fusion, okay, so I would love to hear from you. What was, when you were young, what was the thing that you wanted to do? And y'all, I'm actually serious. I think for all of us, we could probably use a dose of recollection, of going back to the past and being like, oh, what was the thing that I dreamed of? And even so, the past, what did you dream of? And then here today in the present moment, what lights you up? And I wonder, I got to tell you, my darling still doesn't feel like he's figured it out. But man, it's interesting. The things that get him fired up, it is so telling. So what in the past did you dream of? What lights you up right now? And then also, what really, really makes you angry? Because sometimes our anger is one of the greatest revealers of our values, and perhaps even what we're supposed to be doing in the first place. So I'd be curious in that regard. It's a real issue, because making money isn't easy. You're telling me, gosh. Comic Book Fusion, I'd be curious. I know that we all need to make money. 100%, at least for now. Who knows if UBI is going to become a thing? Probably. But I would be curious, if there's some, kind of on the side, like on the weekends, if there's some area that you could start investing in that could be yielding, like you talk about every single investment that we make in terms of our time, we're investing. I watched a Hallmark movie the other day because I just love Hallmark. I'm definitely cheesy like that. I yield return. And so whether that return in that moment is wasted time or that return is, it actually was rejuvenating because I was calming my mind and spirit and all of that. And I felt kind of joy as a result of that. Or there's a whole bunch in between, but we yield return for every single investment. So right now, I've been doing this show every single day for over 365 days. It's been over a year. I haven't yielded monetarily. I've made zero money off of this show. And I don't know if I ever will. And so a lot of business people have actually come to me and said, Christene, why are you going live every day? What even is your offer? Because that's what entrepreneurs talk about, is what's your offer. And I'm like, I don't have one. This is my mission. This is what I am so passionate about. This is what I love to do. And at the same time, there have been days where I have felt tired and or not felt so inspired. So us having a clear why are we getting out of bed every single morning? That's so important. So having a clear why, but also having a clarity around what our yield is from this investment. So I am yielding something other than monetary gain. One, I'm actually getting really clear on what I believe from this show. Yesterday, I had none of that prepared when we got on here and started talking about peace. And then we ended up having this really, really cool conversation around how if we're willing to square off with the truth, thus it breeds freedom. And freedom actually is the thing that yields peace at the end of the day. But it was through the process of just simply getting on here and talking that I was able to kind of find my way into this whole new framework and belief system that I didn't even know that I had. So I yield through going live every day, not at all from monetary gain, but one of the ways that I yield a result on my investment is actually through my own internal processing. And so maybe yours is, I actually want to do something. I want to start drawing every day, or I want to start creating content every day, or I want to start insert the blank. And then what is the yield on your investment? What's the return? So what is your why? And if you don't know some ultimate why, you can just start questioning around what gets me angry, what really makes me feel satisfied, and then where's there some action I can start incorporating on a daily basis based on any one of those two things. So what's your why? And if you don't know yet, start playing around with some action as a result of what makes you mad or what is actually really, really life-giving to you. And then two, what is the yield? Having clarity on our yield gives us sustainability when the going gets tough. Because man, if it's like I'm keeping my word to myself, y'all, that is so important. For probably 6 months, I was going live every single day, and I probably only had maybe 10 people join. Maybe. But it's not like they were talking with me. And so now we've got this community that's so precious to me and so meaningful. But it was 180 days of silence beforehand. And I figured out some algorithmic stuff. So I actually started showing up in your algorithm. But the reality is that there were so many days where I wasn't yielding vanity metrics of likes or comments or shares or subscribers. And it was like, do I believe in this? Am I doing this? Is my why and is my yield, my why and my yield, is it enough to keep me going? Even when what everyone else is saying around me is telling me otherwise. I've had so many entrepreneurs come and tell me to stop doing this show. And I've had a few who really believe in it too. But the reality is, people who don't believe in you, it's like it takes one person to not believe and then like 20 who do believe to kind of counterbalance each other. My mom actually used to say that growing up, and she still says it today to this point of give one area for growth for every 10 to 20 areas of success. So one area of critique, and then outshine that with all the areas of love and compliments and accolades of just encouraging people, which I know some people don't like that concept, but I just think that that's really, really beautiful, making sure someone is so affirmed in the way that we love them, so that when we give a bit of feedback, it's in a secure way where they really feel loved by us, and thus they're more open to receive. So to that point, knowing our purpose, sometimes it starts with just identifying, okay, what's my why? And if I don't know what that is, what makes me angry and what gives me a lot of joy? And then is there a daily practice I can start cultivating just simply out of a response of those? Because the inner, that's inner. The anger and the joy is inside of us. So what's something external I can start doing to actualize that and then see maybe there's something there for me beyond this moment where I'm doing it for free, or maybe this could turn into a career, who knows? So knowing our why, doing something in relation to it, at least until we really figure it out. And then what's our yield? Knowing what our yield is protects us in the vanity metric drought where we're not getting all the praise and accolades externally that most people are vying for. Just jumping back here in the chat. Oh, Comic Book Fusion, you said I really wanted to be a pro boxer and make mad money, be on TV like my dad wanted. Mm. Yeah, you said when warehouses start putting robots to work, we become obsolete. Then it feels like wasted time. Man, I think that comic flick, you said it. So what are you going to start cultivating in the meantime so that, because that's inevitable. What event was I at? The speaker was talking about that. He's like basically working on the floor. Oh, he was working at Amazon. Oh, my gosh, that's so funny. He's literally doing robotics at Amazon, trying to figure out some of the whole warehouse roboticism of being able to kind of do exactly what you're talking about, like forklifts and be able to assess the metrics on a unit and things like that. And he was like, we're pretty far away from it. So have hope in that regard. But at the same time, I think it's important, y'all, that we start cultivating ourselves to the point where we have something intrinsic to offer beyond our intellectualism or the physical capability. It's the spirit and the soul, that which a robot cannot possess and does not possess, at least at this point. And I don't think it ever can. But I know people argue with me in that regard. Leading Healing says, yeah, chronic fatigue and feeling stuck. Sometimes it's very real. Jerion, hello. Wow. Just reading the chat here. Fun, cool. Good to see you. Everyone would benefit from having purpose in life. Yeah, isn't that so true? Wow. Warren, hello. Thank you for joining. I'm glad you're here. Silkden, hello. Richard, hello. Breathes with Dragons. Pray for Fabian. Fabian, I love that. Fabian, we got you. We got you. And I've told you this before. I know you come on here, and almost every time you say this, and man, you get to choose. You get to choose. If you want something, go do it. Y'all, it's so funny, to this point of what if your purpose is bigger than you? If you know something, you know it. Like it's inside of you and you have this stirring inside of you. Take action. Get up off our butts and go do something about it. And it might be a small step sometimes, and it actually usually is going to be a small step. And so the more we can move away from judging the amount of progress from where we start to the next day or to that first step, man, and we just do something, man, and celebrate that. It's almost like self-perpetuate dopamine hits when we do something in accordance with what we've always been wanting to do or been saying we would do. When we actually do it, celebrate it. That perpetuates good behavior. The more we actually give ourselves those dopamine hits when we do the thing that we wanted to do in the first place or that we said we would do, it's teaching our body new habits, and it's teaching our body new behaviors, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing, new ways of being at the end of the day. Y'all, thank you so much for joining. It was so good to see you. I will be back on tomorrow, probably in the morning. I'm traveling this week, so my schedule's a little bit strange, but I'm planning to be on tomorrow morning at I think I said 7 a.m. I think I said 7 a.m. Eastern. So we'll see. I'll go back and check on the chat. If you follow the Knowing podcast, if you've subscribed, we have just like a little chat there where I just shared an update this afternoon. So I'll go check that and make sure that the time is right. But otherwise, in the meantime, thank you for joining. I will see you tomorrow. And y'all, let's remember, man, you've got a big purpose. There's a reason why you're here. There is no accident. And have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining. Talk soon.